5 essential tips to help you build your ideal home gym. Over the past 6 to 7 months, I've put together my ultra performance training studio. This experience has given me a wealth of knowledge as well as resourcefulness in terms of basically making things work, fitting things into space, and just designing and planning over. The space that I was training out of before I was here was a 2 by 3 meter room, essentially a storage closet. This experience has given me a much better perspective on how to do things while trying to optimize space at the same time, as well as keeping costs low and really getting the most out of my gear that I have just due to the sheer limitation of size and storage ability. So, this experience and knowledge perfectly segues me into point number 1, building backwards based on your training needs and your goals. In terms of building backwards from your goals and training needs, I'd first try and identify why you are building this facility / home gym, what you're trying to get out of it, what you really want to include in terms of, say if I'm a rower, for example, to be able to have a squat rack and a bike and no rower would not make much sense. Likewise, if I was a powerlifting athlete and I started my home gym with 5 through 15 kilo dumbbells, a bike and some light resistance bands, it's probably not going to go very far towards actually taking me towards my goals through my training needs. So addressing those and being realistic with yourself. If you might want this piece of flashy machinery or the newest thing here, but if that isn't going to get you closer to your goals through your training, then it's kind of futile and it's pointless. So taking a step back and being able to analyze what I'm trying to get out of this gym is step number 1 to building a successful home gym. Tip number 2, plan out the spacing of your gym. The way that I've got my gym set up here is perfectly representative of what I'm trying to get out of it. As I train a whole host of different athletic-based clients competing in a range of sports, as well as general population clients, I need the best of both worlds. With a lot more of my athletic development style clients, I have this nice free run of about 10 to 12 meters of space in the middle of my gym here. Allows me to do all the different hops, plyometric drills, jumps, skips, bounds, everything you could come up with basically. Where this meets my general population clients is that they can benefit from this space basically using a lot of the free weights, different benches, boxes, med balls, anything you really want. Free space is never going to be something that you regret having. You're going to probably want to fill it, and especially with a lot of home gyms being not the biggest sized facility or space to work with, you're going to want to jam pack everything you can in there. Keeping some free space to be able to perform movements like this has been one of the biggest pivotal things that I'm quite thankful I did, rather than trying to jam another treadmill in the corner because I have space here, and then a bike here, and then a rower over there. Keeping some of that free space through smart planning of where I'm going to put everything, how I'm going to lay it out, is absolutely worth its weight in gold. Realistically, you're probably going to play with it over the time you're having it, especially if you're having your home gym for multiple years. As you start to change and upgrade the actual equipment and sort of gear that you have, you'll be very likely to probably swing a few things around, modify where things sit, and just optimize the space better. But initially, planning that space out will give you a much better first result rather than having to do a few rearrangements to get that same sort of optimization. Tip number 2 leads us perfectly into tip number 3. Efficient storage can make a small space feel much larger. This tails perfectly on from planning out that space is planning out your storage as well. In my previous facility that was a 2 by 3 meter room, I was able to have a power rack, barbell, trap bar, sets of dumbbells, med balls, bench, and be able to use all of these functionally. Albeit I wouldn't have more than 1 or 2 people training at the same time because you just basically end up stepping on each other's feet at that point, especially trying to do things simultaneously. But the way that I was able to achieve that was through smart use of my storage. So using my power rack with some weight loading pins on the back of it basically doubled as a utility to anchor the rack itself as it wasn't hard bolted into the ground, as well as acted as great storage for my plates that didn't involve taking up any extra floor space or bringing in like a weight tree or something like that into the equation. Adding on to that, using my rack itself on the back side of it, having the band anchoring pins, nothing crazy, just basically a metal pin, and storing all of my bands, skipping ropes, and basically hanging implements on the back there. As this relates back to the previous point as well, choosing smart gear is a great way to be able to free up some more space here. So if you're working with a really small space, something that I probably didn't give its due diligence was to look into the possibility of buying a folding power rack. So what that essentially is a power rack that sits on its far post and is anchored down, but the closer ones to you allow you to swing in and out and swivel. I'll chuck a link to one up here, and you can see what they look like and how they function, and they're a great way to be essentially what's called a space saver rack, where it functions just as well as a normal power rack, nothing too different. Generally the load rating is pretty similar. You might be spending a little bit more on the sort of the money and cash side there, but again, if space is your premium and sort of limitation there, a little bit of extra money to get heaps more functionality out of your space is probably going to be worth it to you if you're serious about building a good home gym. Tip number 4, not everything needs to be bought new straight away. Consider secondhand purchases. This is something that I feel people in the fitness space over the past sort of 2 years and whole pandemic situation have basically had to take and run with. Weight plates over this time period in Australia were costing the same for a secondhand metal rubber coated plate as a brand new Rogue bumper. So you can imagine that the premium on these items as I've been building this space has been sky high. Rubber coated metal plates that aren't pretty, aren't fancy, have scuffs and dings taken out of them, but at the end of the day, all I want them for is the load, so what they look like isn't really a big factor to me. The fact that I was able to buy them and actually get a hold of them during this time was a much bigger thing to me than what they look like. So always consider secondhand gear, especially if you're limited on budget. Tip number 5, multi-use gear is absolutely king. So again, this kind of goes without saying. I feel that a lot of people that are building their home gym and starting from scratch, look at the biggest pieces first. This point here goes hand in hand with point number 1 in terms of knowing what you're trying to get out of your training space, knowing your goals, and making sure that the training needs can be accomplished within your home gym. So putting those 2 points hand in hand allow you to get the most for your money, the most out of your space, and basically just the most optimized and efficient training experience in your home gym. That about wraps us up for today, guys. Hopefully you guys have taken a few things from this, maybe reframed how you're approaching your home gym, learned a bit about how to build one, or even just maybe gained some insight into what it is like to try and build a facility and what things I should be mindful of there. Stay tuned to the channel. In the next week, I'm going to be releasing a full updated walkthrough and tour of my home gym, what I have in here, what's changed from my last video. If you haven't seen my last one, should be up here right about now. Check it out. It gives you a good insight into what my facility was like 3-4 months ago, and you'll be able to see what I've changed in the meantime. You know what it is. Stay hungry, keep lifting.